Okay, so welcome to video 5 of Practical Application 9 in Chapter 5 of the Advanced GIS textbook. In this video, we are going to look at some customized table calculations and reclassifications within feature class attribute tables. And so I want to show you how we can use some basic coding and modifications to do a little bit more interesting things than just basic math based upon data within the attribute fields. And now we have our local parks of Springville open up, and we've got the new table data appended, including normalized difference vegetation values and temperature values from 2010 and 2025, and the original data that was there. They provide acres, and then of course feature classes have their basic shape area as well, but there's this class of type which is called park, green space, or neighborhood park. We want to create a new class which kind of separates these different parks into kind of their scales a little bit more interestingly. So I could sort these, and we'd see that there's quite a few of these smaller parks, less than 1 acre in size. Some of them are actually referred to as mini parks, whereas others are called parks. And then we have other parks that are like 47 acres. They're kind of huge, also referred to as just parks in the basic original feature class. We'll create another field, which we'll call park class. And we're going to create our own classification of these based upon acres. So to do this, we can create a feature, an attribute field, sorry, and we'll call it park class. And to give it some sort of descriptive thing, we need to call it a text. Okay, so save. Okay, and then we close this, and we have that new attribute field here. If we right click on that, we can click calculate field, and practicing this, so I've got it open. Let me just show you. So park class we can say is equal to whatever you want, and it can be a function of any of these other things. In this case, it is going to be a function of size, or in this case, acres. But we want to do a reclassification, and we have different types of expressions available to us. And then there's also these helpers in here. So if we go on here and we look at functions, we can see these different functions that are readily built for us. And it's worth getting kind of used to and knowing what these mean. In this case, we want the function called reclassify. And so how it works is it's going to reclassify some field that already exists based upon what you tell it here. And so the field that we want to reclassify is the size field, or the acres. So I'm going to replace what was inside of the parentheses with that field name, acres. So it has to be exclamation acres, exclamation. So it's calling that. And then in here, there's this code block that's built for us that we can modify. It says define, reclassify the argument. If the argument, or acres, is none, return what? It says return 1. If it's equal to 0, return 2. These are just examples, and we can change this however we want. And so if it's none, and since I've got text or string, I want to just return none, like it doesn't exist. And then this elif means else if. So if it's not none, if it's something else, and the argument equals something, then return this. So I don't really want this one because I don't think we're going to have any zeros exactly. I can see that we don't. I'm going to delete that. And I see else if the argument is greater than or equal to 0, and the argument is less than something, 10 in this case, then return something else. So this is a useful starting point for me. And so I'm going to do 4 classes of park size or park class. And I'm going to say it's mini, small, medium, and large. And so this first one is going to be the mini. So I'm going to say return mini, mini park. And I'm going to say if it's less than 1 acre, it'll be a mini park. Okay, so now I'm going to grab what I just wrote here, and I'm actually going to replace this next one with that. And I'll do that 2 more times. Okay, so now I have to just change these arguments. So now the next one after the mini should be if it's greater than 1, and less than something, it's called a small park. And I'm going to say if it's less than 3, no, let's do less than 4. It's up to us. We'll call it small park, but I'm just going to leave it as small because I didn't say mini park before. And then here, this has to become 4. And then if it's less than 10, oops, we'll call it medium. And now we can just do an open-ended else if it's greater than 10, we'll call it large. I had to put these quotes around these terms, mini, small, medium, and large, and none, because it's a string value. Okay, so its expression is valid. Now I'm going to just click apply, and we'll see what happens over here. And they are already sorted, and so we should have mini, small, medium, and large. And so that worked. So we reclassified the acres into a qualitative class. We could do something else to like think about healthy versus unhealthy vegetation by year instead of just looking at these raw NDVI values, just to kind of emphasize the point. And so we could say veg 2010, and we could call it text. And save. We could add another one and call it veg 2025. And we could call it text as well. Save. Now we close that, and we would do a similar sort of thing, another reclassification or just classification of the NDVI values. So if we go to calculate field, since we already know we're using a reclass, it remembers the last thing you were doing. I'm going to reclassify 2010, and I'm going to say if the argument and is none, we'll return none, but there's none of that. So if it's between, now we're going to have negative values potentially, although I'm not sure about that. So let's look at, no, there's no negative NDVI values in the parks. That makes sense. So if it's between 0 and what? So everything's going to be 0 and 1. So we need to lower this. So 0.2, we're going to call it unhealthy. Since it's a park, we're in the city where things are irrigated. I think that makes sense. It's 0.2 then to an argument less than 0.3. We could say it is questionable. How about that? And then if it's let's return now just 3 classes, so we'll get rid of this one. If it is greater than 0.3, we could call it healthy. And we could modify these. Maybe a better number if we look through the statistics would be like 0.35, but let's just leave it at that for now. And then we click apply. And we can look through in 2010. Most things are showing up as healthy. Is that right? 2010. Why is that showing up as healthy? That should be questionable. So let's read this through. The argument, oh, oh, because I've got the wrong argument. Well, maybe not. Let's see. So change veg 2010. No, we don't want that. We want NDVI 2010. There we go. Okay, so the argument NDVI 2010. You'll have to remember, I don't know if I did that right before. Okay, so now we've got the argument correctly there and we've got the numbers correct. Let's see if it works. Okay, that looks good. So some of them are listed as unhealthy, some questionable, and some healthy. Perfect. And so we could do the same thing now using the same classification for 2025 and apply. Oh, it failed on me. I'll just say okay and like open the table for a second. It looks like the same exact result. That doesn't seem right. So let's try this, run it one more time. And let's look, does it make sense? No, these two should be different than each other. I wonder if I overwrote 2010. So veg 2025, I just ran. Let's go back in here and calculate field again. You gotta be careful. I think I overwrote 2010. Okay, so NDVI 2010, July is the argument now. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I had overwritten some things. Careful what you're doing there. Okay, so now we can kind of qualitatively classify them into 3 classes if we wanted to look at that. And so hopefully you find this useful, these ways of basically doing some custom attribute table calculations, classifications. You can do more complicated math, some statistical analyses, things like that. If you right click, go to calculate field, and consider using some of these helpers, but we need to look through them to see what's there. So if you've got some idea of things that you want to do to create new sophisticated calculations in your attribute tables, please pursue that. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to do some custom labeling, and we will compare the NDVI green space in these parks in Springville through time and wrap up this video series. Okay, see you for that video soon.